Will Homelander die? The Boys Season 5. Episode 9, Finale, Theories and Predictions, The Boys Season 5. Episode 9, let's start with where the boys actually are right now, emotionally and physically, because understanding that is absolutely critical to understanding how this finale is going to play out. Frenchie is dead, and that is not just a plot point. That is a wound that goes straight to the soul of this team. From the very beginning of this show, Frenchie was the heartbeat of the group in a way that was quiet but undeniable. He was the one who kept things human. He was the one who reminded everyone around him that even in the middle of all this chaos, all this violence, all this ugliness, there was still something worth fighting for. And now he's gone. Homelander took him from them, and that changes everything about how the boys are going to walk into this final confrontation. This is no longer just Butcher's war. It never truly was, but now it's deeply personal for every single person on that team in a way that it hasn't been before. Kimiko is carrying something inside her that is almost impossible to comprehend. The idea that a person could absorb the equivalent of an atomic bomb's worth of radiation and hold it within their body is already extraordinary, but the fact that it's Kimiko doing it makes it even more significant. Because Kimiko and Frenchie were everything to each other. They were the kind of bond that you rarely see portrayed on television with that level of honesty and rawness. No words needed, just a connection that went beyond language, beyond explanation, beyond anything that could be easily defined, and now she has lost him. The person who saw her more clearly than anyone else in the world, the person who loved her without condition or complication, is gone. So when Kimiko walks into that final battle, she is not just a weapon. She is grief personified. She is every moment of love and loss and rage wrapped into one person who is now carrying the literal power to bring down the most powerful being on the planet. That is an incredible setup for a finale. And it also introduces a layer of unpredictability that makes this whole thing even more tense and uncertain. Because here is the thing about Kimiko going into this battle fueled by raw emotion. Emotion is powerful, but it is also unstable. It is also unpredictable. And the boys have never been in a situation quite like this before, where the person they are relying on as their primary weapon is also the person most consumed by grief and pain. Think about what that means in practical terms. Kimiko has never used this particular power before. She absorbed it, yes, but actually channeling it and directing it toward a target, toward Homelander specifically, in a controlled and effective way, that is a completely different thing. And the fact that she has never done it before, combined with the fact that she is an emotional wreck right now because of what happened to Frenchie, creates a scenario where anything could go wrong. The boys are betting everything on this. They are walking into the most dangerous confrontation they have ever faced, against an opponent who has consistently proven that he is operating on a completely different level from everyone else. And the thing they are counting on most is something that has never actually been tested in a real combat situation. That is not a plan that inspires complete confidence. That is a plan that feels like it could go sideways at any moment. And then, there is Butcher, Billy Butcher, the man who has been the engine driving this entire show from the very beginning. The man who made a deal with every devil available to him just to get close enough to Homelander to bring him down. Butcher has never been fighting for the world, not really. He has been fighting for Becca. He has been carrying her with him through every brutal decision, every moral compromise, every moment where he chose violence and destruction when perhaps another path was available. Becca is why he started this. Becca is what has kept him going even when everything fell apart around him. And now, as we approach the finale, Butcher is in a place where he has never been before. He is close. Genuinely, terrifyingly close to the thing he has wanted more than anything else in the world. The chance to look Homelander in the eye and watch him fall. The chance to finally close the chapter that has defined his entire existence for years. But the question is, what happens to Butcher after that? What does a man like Billy Butcher do when the one thing he has been living for is finally done? Because the show has been quietly but consistently building toward a very dark answer to that question. And I think the finale is going to confront it head-on in a way that is going to absolutely destroy us emotionally. There is something that Butcher said that has been sitting in the back of my mind ever since he said it. He said the world is a better place without any soups in it. He genuinely believes that. He has believed it for a long time. And while there was a period where his relationship with Ryan complicated that belief, where he was forced to look at a soup and see something other than a weapon or a monster, the core of what Butcher believes has never really changed. Soups are dangerous. Soups are a threat to the natural order of things. And as long as soups exist, the world will never truly be safe. Now add to that the fact that Butcher has the virus. A weapon of almost unimaginable consequence, something that could theoretically wipe out every soup on the planet if deployed in the right way. And suddenly the question is not just whether Homelander is going to die in this finale. The question becomes much bigger and much more terrifying than that. The question becomes whether Butcher is going to try to end all of it, every last bit of it. Whether his final act in this story is going to be the most extreme and devastating one imaginable. And Sister Sage knowing how to make stable V, the fact that Ryan, Sage, Starlight, and Kimiko might be protected from whatever Butcher is planning, feels less like a coincidence and more like the show setting up the exact scenario where Butcher makes a choice that is completely consistent with who he is, but absolutely shattering to witness. The boys have been through so much together. They have lost people. They have made impossible choices. They have faced things that would have broken anyone else 100 times over. And now they are walking into the final chapter of their story with everything on the line. Every piece of this is connected. Kimiko's grief, Butcher's rage, the virus, the radiation, Soulja Boy locked in cryosleep, Homelander in the Oval Office believing he is God. It is all converging toward something enormous. Something that this show has been building toward for 5 seasons. And whatever happens in that finale, it is going to hit differently because of everything these characters have been through. Because we have been through it with them. And that is what makes this final episode feel so different from any other season finale this show has ever done. This is not a cliffhanger. This is an ending. A real, permanent, no-going-back ending. And the boys are going to face it in the most broken and determined state they have ever been in. Grieving and dangerous and ready to burn it all down if that is what it takes. Let's talk about Homelander. Because as terrifying and as powerful and as utterly unhinged as he has always been, there is something different about where he is right now heading into this finale. And that difference is everything. For the first time in a very long time, maybe for the first time ever, Homelander is sitting in a position that looks like absolute power on the surface, but is quietly, slowly, inevitably beginning to crack underneath. And the most dangerous version of Homelander has never been the one who is winning. The most dangerous version of Homelander is the one who feels like he is starting to lose. Because that is when he stops performing and starts destroying. That is when the mask comes completely off, and what is underneath is something that no amount of preparation or planning can fully account for. And that is exactly the version of Homelander that the boys are going to be walking toward in this finale. Think about where Homelander actually is right now. He has killed the president. He is sitting inside the Oval Office like he has always believed he deserved to. He has declared himself God. He has built an entire religious and political movement around the idea that he is not just a superhero, not just a leader, but a divine being who exists on a completely different plane from every other human being on this planet. The Democratic Church of America has given him something he has craved his entire life, which is unconditional worship. Absolute devotion. The kind of love and adoration that cannot be questioned or taken away because it has been elevated to the level of faith. For a man who grew up in a laboratory, who was denied every basic human connection, who has spent his entire life swinging violently between desperate neediness and explosive rage. Having an entire movement of people who literally worship him as a god is the ultimate version of the validation he has always been chasing. And for a brief moment, it probably felt like enough. It probably felt like the thing that was finally going to fill the void that has been at the center of who Homelander is since the very beginning. But here is the problem. It is never going to be enough. It has never been enough. Every time Homelander has gotten close to the thing he thought he wanted most, the approval of the crowd, the love of Ryan, the respect of his peers, the absolute authority over everyone around him, It has always fallen short of whatever it is he is actually looking for. Because what Homelander is actually looking for is something that cannot be given to him by any amount of worship or power or control. He is looking for something genuine, something real, something that does not come from fear or manipulation, or the threat of laser eyes and heat vision. And deep down, in whatever part of him is still capable of self-awareness, he knows that everything he has built is constructed on exactly those things. Fear, manipulation, threat. None of the people who worship him actually love him. They are afraid of him. And on some level, Homelander knows the difference. He has always known the difference. It is just that acknowledging that difference would mean acknowledging that everything he has fought for and built and destroyed people to maintain is essentially hollow. And Homelander is not capable of sitting with that truth for very long before it turns into something violent. Now layer on top of that the fact that his empire is genuinely beginning to show real cracks. The Democratic Church of America and the whole narrative of Homelander being a god is going to be released to the public. And when that happens, the reaction is not going to be uniform. Because while Homelander has a very devoted and very intense base of support, the idea of accepting a superhero as a literal deity is a bridge too far for a significant portion of even his most enthusiastic supporters. There is a difference between loving Homelander as a symbol of strength and power and American supremacy and actually kneeling before him as the creator of the universe. And when that information hits the public, when people start to genuinely grapple with what Homelander is actually claiming to be and what that means in practical terms for how they are expected to live their lives and conduct their worship, there are going to be people who were with him yesterday who are not with him today. And Homelander is going to feel that shift. He is going to feel the crowd beginning to turn, even slightly, and that is going to trigger exactly the kind of response that makes him most dangerous. Because here is what Homelander does when he feels the love starting to drain away. He does not adjust. He does not recalibrate or find a smarter approach or try to win people back through charm or policy or spectacle. He punishes, he brings his reckoning exactly as he promised at the end of episode 7. He makes an example of the people who doubt him. He turns the full force of everything he is toward making sure that anyone who questions his divinity understands, in the most visceral and terrifying way possible, why that is the wrong choice. And that approach, that totalitarian instinct to respond to dissent with overwhelming and brutal force, is the thing that is going to accelerate the collapse of his empire rather than prevent it. Because you can control people through fear for a while. You can maintain a grip on a population that is terrified of you. But when the fear starts to compete with something else, with anger, with disgust, with the simple human refusal to be treated as less than human, the grip starts to slip. And once it starts slipping, it slips fast. This is the arc that Homelander has been on for this entire final season, and the finale is where it reaches its conclusion. He walked into season 5 at what felt like the peak of his power. He had the presidency. He had the crowd. He had Ryan at his side. He had Soulja Boy as a potential ally. He had systematically dismantled every meaningful opposition to his authority. And yet, piece by piece, all of those things have been taken from him or have fallen apart. Ryan is gone, and that relationship ended in a way that cut Homelander more deeply than almost anything else could, because Ryan represented the one genuine connection Homelander had ever had, the one relationship that came closest to something real and unforced. Soulja Boy is in cryosleep not because Homelander defeated him, but because he was afraid of him, which means that somewhere in that locked-up chamber is a being powerful enough to drain Homelander of everything that makes him who he is, and Homelander knows it. The president is dead, which means the political legitimacy that Homelander was using as a fig leaf over his actual authoritarian control is gone. And now the religious movement he built is about to be exposed to a public that is not entirely ready to accept it. Strip all of that away, and what you are left with is a Homelander who is more isolated than he has ever been, more alone, more desperate. And still, despite all of that, still the most physically powerful being on the planet. That combination, desperate isolation and near limitless physical power, is the most terrifying thing imaginable. Because a Homelander who has nothing left to lose is a Homelander who has no reason to hold anything back. And I think the finale is going to show us exactly what that looks like. The reckoning he promised is not going to be strategic or calculated. It is going to be emotional and explosive and almost impossible to contain. He is going to lash out at everyone and everything around him. He is going to make the world feel his pain in the most direct and devastating way he can. And the boys are going to have to walk straight into the eye of that storm with a plan that has never been tested and a team that is already broken by grief. What makes this even more fascinating and more narratively rich is the question of Homelander's self-awareness in those final moments. Because there has always been a version of Homelander underneath all the performance and the rage and the laser eyes that is genuinely, deeply, unbearably sad. A child who was never loved, who was experimented on, who was told he was special, but was never actually treated as a person. And while the show has never asked us to excuse what Homelander has done, it has consistently made sure we understood where it came from. The tragedy of Homelander is not just what he does to other people. It is what was done to him first. And in those final moments, when the power is gone and the crowd has turned and Ryan is not there and he is standing in the Oval Office with